Whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is going to be a nice little analysis into some parts of this most recent Bloodborne information that we've been getting that you might not have spotted or had the time to really look into. And hopefully I'm going to go through a few of them and maybe bring some more light to things that we now have solid evidence exist in the game. Rather than us just openly speculating, we can now speculate on something solid. And a lot of this is coming courtesy from footage that IGN have been releasing, because they're doing a month of Bloodborne to kind of build some hype for it and to bring piece by piece bits of information about the game. And of course, IGN does have exclusivity on this, so I'm unable to show you videos and things, but what I do have is some images that we can analyse and hopefully we can build from there. So the very first one I have for you here is a little close-up at the statistical screen in the beginning Dream Refuge of Bloodborne, from the 18 minutes of the beginning of the game, released earlier this week. So as you see here, the character is level 9. The symbol's represented by a crescent moon. Below it, it says Blood Echoes, and there's that sign that you see, I think it's the loading icon. It's kind of like a footprint from a bird upside down, maybe like a sword hilt, and what have you. Blood Echoes are the currency in Bloodborne. This character at the moment has 340 Blood Echoes, not a lot. That's your souls, that's what you're going to be using to buy things, upgrade things, all that kind of good stuff. That's what you're going to be losing if you die too much. Then below that we have Vitality, which Dark Souls 2 changed to Vigour. This one's brought Vitality back, thank goodness, now we don't have to be confused. And there's a love heart on it, so we all know that the love heart means health. Below it is a teardrop, a red teardrop, which is endurance. Then the strength, of course, which is just the dude who's all ripped and got his swell on. Then below that we have skill. And now the bottom two are the ones that are probably the most interesting part of this little observation. We have Blood Tinge and Arcane. So immediately, my brain is saying intelligence and faith, or some derivative of that. The one that screams it is of course Arcane, because that's another way of saying magic in an older tongue. But Blood Tinge could be absolutely anything. However, the assumption at this moment in time for myself is that it's somehow magic orientated, but it would be kind of cool if it was some kind of, you know, stat that was associated with how much you've killed. Because of course, there's a big emphasis on this game with blood. We don't really know too much about what the blood does aside from the Blood Echoes, which is the currency, and of course when you die in this game, instead of leaving a bloodstain, the monster that killed you inherits your blood. And you can be able to spot them because the creatures will have, I think, red eyes, I read in a little piece of information. And then when you kill them, it says blood transfusion successful, and that's how you get your souls back, or your Blood Echoes back. So it'd be really interesting that if this was some stat governing, essentially, you know, how much you've done in the game, or how covered in blood you've been, or, you know, some kind of berserker stat that gives you a nice passive. I have no illusions here that that's probably not what it is, but it would be quite interesting. Let me know what you think about the stats, guys. That is the first piece of information here. So the second piece of information I have is a breakdown of the classes in the game. Of course, the video that this was taken from didn't dwell on them too much, so we can't really look into anything more than 2 explanations for the first 2 classes, and then the rest is complete speculation. So the first one at the top is called Milk-U Toast, or however you say that word. I am quite the student of the English language, and I have never heard that. That is worth a Google, but that is the first of the classes, and it says an ordinary happy upbringing. All attributes are average. So that is probably your cookie cutter, bread and butter beginner class, where nothing is particularly excelling in anything, but all the stats are well represented. A little bit like you're deprived, only not with the whole connotation that he's a tougher class to use because he's naked and, you know, very manly. But I'm not going to talk about Lone Survivor just yet, because there's going to be another piece of, another image I've got for you, which will tell you what the description on that one is, so we're just going to skip it for the moment. So we have Troubled Childhood, which makes me wonder, is that going to be like a late bloomer kind of build, where you start off kind of vulnerable and troubled, but as you grow up it steals you and you get a better benefit as you get higher leveled or as the longer you play? Could be something interesting. Then we have Violent Past, which makes me think that that one's probably not going to be very good at the more magical aspects of the game, if there are any, and he might focus on, you know, the violence that he's had to put up with in his lifetime, and he's unfortunately got very good at it. Then you have the Professional, who is of course going to be a professional at something. He will excel at one area or another, or he'll have something that makes him, you know, just better than your average hunter. Then you have Military Veteran, which seems like a next step or like a complementary build to the Professional, where he must have some kind of, you know, specialty in combat, be it the gun, maybe it's Professional is good with the sword or the axes, the melee stuff, and the Military Veteran is good with the guns, so he has a nice gun bonus. Then you have the Noble Scion, which makes me think that that's probably looking more towards the arcane or something along those lines. Then Cruel Fate, which makes me wonder what that could possibly be. Maybe that's somebody who starts off really good but then degrades and suffers in the long run. And then of course you have the Deprived, which is Waste of Skin, which makes me think that that's the one that's kind of going to be the jokey, challengey build slash nobody's going to pick it unless they're being silly kind of thing. But if the guy in the video had dwelled on these a little bit longer or even gone down the list, I would have been able to bring you more. But unfortunately I just have the Milk You Toast things, or the Milk Toast, or whatever the hell it is. Milk? I don't even know. Weird. And then this one, which is the explanation for the Lone Survivor. Lone Survivor of Lost Hamlet. High life essence and vigour. So that makes me think that maybe he's the HP gouge kind of build, the crazy tank, or the dude who can take a few hits, maybe a little bit like the Knight class, who's a little more armoured than your average starting class, and he's the guy that you go to. But that is pretty much it when it comes to the classes. You can speculate a lot of things from what we know from previous games. There will be somebody who specialises in each of the magics, there will be somebody who specialises in strength, someone who specialises in dex, someone who has, you know, an easier start, someone who has a less easier start, but there's no point in me just running the mill on these kind of things, because they're a little bit mundane, and I think we can all do that. So let's move on to the next thing that you might have missed. So this next one is probably less about what you didn't see, and more about what we did see, and that has been taken from the video that was released about the creator character feature of Bloodborne. It's been embellished upon from the previous iterations. It looks very Souls-like to me. It kind of has the same hair, kind of has a lot of the same features. It has a lot of customization, but it's a lot of stuff that people probably ignore / don't even really bother with. But the thing that I found most interesting here was this particular slide, the one that says tattoo, mark, and glasses. So those are immediately more interesting than any of the stuff you could do before, because it's something that can truly differentiate and give you an extra feature to your character. And the hairstyles are always going to be the hairstyles, the skin colour is always going to enable you to make some twatty green guy or some silly pink person, but it's entirely up to you with that. But with this, you can actually do stuff that's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And as you can see there, you've got no glasses, you've got normal glasses, you've got kind of John Lennon glasses, you've got a single monocle, you've got those crazy looking like inventor glasses / you know, welder glasses, you've got the opaque ones, the transparencies, and all over the place. You've got a nice gradient of interesting things, and then you have, of course, the option for tattoos. So I'm hoping tattoos are more interesting in this one than they are in some games. I'm hoping there's a real opportunity to do something interesting with them if you're creative. And another thing I'm interested in is the mark. So if you watch the first 18 minutes of Bloodborne, you'll notice that he talks to a very Yorkshire sounding woman. She's really common. She sounds like pretty much every wildling in Game of Thrones, because they all come from, you know, town like, come to the Arnhem, to this bloody hell type of speech. And she gives you a mark. She gives you a specific mark. I'm not too sure which one it is, because, you know, it could mean anything, but she gives you whatever the mark is, and I don't know what it does. It could be completely cosmetic and nothing else, but I'm hoping and devoutly wishing that it's a passive of some sort. It is some way of modifying your game or your character or his abilities, because that would be super cool if it was. and I'm very curious to see what that is. But swiftly moving on. So this is the stuff that I'm really interested in. This is the stuff that I mentioned that I should probably pause and check out when I was doing my 18-minute coverage, which you probably haven't heard yet, because I'm trying to space out my Bloodborne content. 'Cause I saw a lot of channels when I was googling, looking for information, that were doing 2 to 3 minute long videos, and tons of them. They had like 7 in a week, and it's like, come on, dude. You don't know that much, and you can't be that interesting. And when I clicked on them, of course, there wasn't even commentary, so I don't know what the fuck that dude was doing. But anyhow, this is what happens at the very beginning in Dream Refuge when your character goes up the stairs and you are approached by those crazy skull things that were on your body when you were on the gurney. They ask you to select your trick weapon. Trick weapon must be Bloodborne slang for the melee weapon in this game, and here are your starting weapons. So, the first one is the Saw Cleaver. It is the stereotypical, iconic image of Bloodborne. The character with the crazy hat, with that awesome Inverness coat thing. And this weapon. It is essentially a flick razor, a straight razor that's serrated, but instead of it being pocket-sized, it's kind of giant-sized. And of course it transforms, but we're not going to talk too much about transformations. On this we can see it does 90 physical attack. For some reason he has +4 on his physical attack. I assume it's some kind of scaling benefit from maybe his strength or his skill. It does no blood attack, it does no arcane attack, or fire, or bolt. They are the most interesting parts of that. You have your physical, you have your blood, which I assume is maybe some kind of projectile or special physical. Then you have arcane, fire, and bolt. So magic-wise, 3 different calibers of magic here, and perhaps a 4th one if you include blood, considering whatever the hell it does. Then below that, there's Quicksilver bullet use, which I assume that's for when you have a gun equipped with them, or maybe it's just not applicable to this, because you'll see there's a little like minus sign. And then below it, of course, is durability. 340 durability on the Saw Cleaver. And then below that, special attack. Now this is the part I find really, really interesting. So the icons there, 2 of them are skull based, which makes me think perhaps one is a poison statistic and the other is maybe a bleed statistic. And then the last 2, each of them have lines through certain images. The first one looks like some kind of crescent moon / curly sea, and then the other one looks like a dog or a wolf, which makes me think that maybe they are how effective that weapon is against perhaps humanoid characters, or how effective it again is against maybe supernatural characters like your werewolves or your animals. Maybe it's effectiveness against beasts, effectiveness against hunters, because we've seen from a lot of the footage so far, we're going to be fighting other hunters, be it PvP, be it just the way the game works with the Scourge that's twisting their, you know, their mentalities and their minds and things. Who knows? But there are 4 variables of special attack here which are very fascinating, and I'm super excited to see how that's going to go. So the next bit is interesting. Attribute bonus. So you remember when I started talking I said that there's a +4 on physical attack, which could be from scaling. This is the part that makes me think that maybe it's not, because there's no attribute bonuses on this weapon at all, yet he's still getting some kind of buff to that weapon, which means maybe this is something additional to scaling, or maybe I just don't understand why he has a buff. Maybe his build is you know, +4 physical attack build. Who knows? But if the weapon did have any kind of bonus for attributes, that is where it would be displayed. And once again, it is strength, it is skill, it is blood tinge, and it is arcane. So those are all the... Actually... Oh, do you notice how on attribute requirements, the picture for the final one on the right is different? The one for attribute bonus is the kind of star one, which if you look up on that same tab is arcane attack, and then the bottom one is just arcane in general, so maybe there's a different icon for attack / defense. Once again, I couldn't tell you guys, I haven't touched the game, but it's interesting anyhow. Attributes required for this weapon are 8 and 7. The Hunter Axe has 100 more durability, and it also has 8 extra damage. And then the weapon that I will be starting with, the Threaded Cane, has the weakest of the damages and the lowest of the durabilities, but of course it's probably going to be slightly quicker. But that is the right hand weapon, so now let's have a look at the left hand weapon. So the next tab is the left hand weapons and the next of the tutorial weapons you get to choose from. So this is the guns, the ones that are based in the player's left hand. So if you look here, you have the choice of the Hunter's Pistol and the Hunter's Blunderbuss. The Hunter's Pistol here has 75 blood attack with a scaling of +1. Its durability is 180. The requirements, as you can see, are 3 separate stats, one of them including the Blood Tinge ability. So this is how you deliver blood attacks. At this moment, I don't know of any information that completely elaborates on exactly the difference between normal attacks and blood attacks, the use of them, the need of them, and what they're going to be really, worthwhile in using them for. But what we do know is that the guns are pretty much the area that governs this. Of course, the Hunter's Pistol is going to be a single-shot specific kind of weapon that has a better damage variant than the other, but the Blunderbuss is going to have probably multiple spread, and maybe more stun or additional knockback. Other than that, I can't really tell you too much information here because there's not really too much to do. He didn't ever toggle into the information about the weapons where you could read about them, and he did flick between most of the weapons here, but all of them have stats that are so comparable. I didn't really want to be pedantic and waste people's times by looking at all of them when they're all pretty much identical requirements to use and very close on the physical edge. But here is the guns anyhow. You'll notice it says Quicksilver Bullet Use 1. I don't know if that means that's how many it has at one time, or if it's a history of how many you've used. It would make me think that it shoots a single shot, and that's why that information is there. But something else that's quite interesting on the right here, that I didn't mention earlier, and I probably should, is inside. You see that on the right? There's level, blood echoes, and inside. I can only speculate that that is perhaps item find, or some kind of item discovery statistic. Or maybe there is a perception in this game that works a little bit like Fallout, where on Fallout 3 the higher your perception, the easier it was to sense and spot enemies at a distance. Maybe it'll heighten your sense. I highly doubt that, but it's interesting. Maybe it's the equivalent of humanity, where you have this passive that gives you some kind of benefits that you can get just ambiently in the world or through consumables. I guess we'll have to find out for that one. But that is pretty much the starting equipment pages there. They were only shown briefly in that video, so I thought I'd go back over them. But still things to look at here, guys, so let's see the next one. So this next one is another one that I'm really interested in, because this is kind of the bread and butter information that it sounds kind of boring when you just lay it out there, but it's the stuff that's really going to be affecting how you play for pretty much your entirety of your experience with Bloodborne. And this is, of course, the menu. So, anybody who's played the Souls games knows that Demon Souls and Dark Souls handled the menu slightly different to what Dark Souls 2 did. I personally really disliked what they did in Dark Souls 2 to the menu. Instead of having it central to the character, they kind of offset it, and it made it difficult to do a lot of the things I used to do in those previous games. So it's very nice and refreshing to see that Bloodborne has gone the same way as those predecessors, and it's moved it back to being more central. But another thing that seems really cool here is it's also minimised the need for tabs, or this obsession with, more clicks to get into the menu. So immediately here, there are 3 tabs at the top, but it looks like the game automatically starts him in an area where he can access his weapons, his armour, and his item consumables. So there's no need to immediately have to pick anything before that, and it'll circumvent that unnecessary step to getting where you need to be, which I think is a really big improvement. However, I haven't seen it running enough to see if there is, any more technicality to the menus which slows them down and makes them a little bit more cumbersome and unaccessible as I would like them to be, but just from a fleeting glance at them, they seem okay. So what do we have? The first one, I assume, is the tab for this, what you're seeing. The second one must be an options tab, and then the last one could probably be a status tab to show you all your stats and your dude's picture and things, which makes me wonder if it's not that, it's the one that lets you quit the game. But just looking purely based on the images, it would make me think that the middle one is probably going to be options and quit game, and then the right one is just some kind of, frivolous, maybe leaderboards or something along those lines. But what does this tell us? I mean, it might not look like much, but it actually tells us quite a lot. It tells us that in the arms there are 4 slots. However, it doesn't specify what these slots are for. So I assume it is 2 for the left and 2 for the right, but who knows, maybe you can have 4 on the right, which would be absolutely ridiculous, but you never know. It's something interesting there. Below we have a helmet, we have a chest piece, we have arms, and we have legs. They are the common armor variables of every Souls game that I've played, and Bloodborne seems to be adhering to this as well. One thing that they've mentioned in these videos, which is quite nice to see, is instead of it being armor, in this game they're focusing on fabrics. So instead of wearing big bulky chest plates and all that kind of stuff, you're going to be wearing stuff that looks slightly cooler and has an emphasis on movement. And the programmer did say that they used a lot of CPU simulating realistic looking fabric, so if the frame rate's dogshit, you know who to blame. But lastly below that is what I assume are your item slots, and as you can see there are 6 of them, which is pretty much par for the course and very similar to how we've played Dark Souls in the past. Not really too much more to say about this one except for it looks functional. Hopefully it'll be really quick and responsive and there'll be no delays on it, and there'll be no like pressing start and shit doesn't turn up or dropped inputs, because that would be the worst. But I'm hoping that those extra months of polish have enabled them to get the menu so that they work as well as they could physically work, because menuing is a very important part of a Souls game because it doesn't pause the game, and Bloodborne is probably going to be very similar. And if you can die when you're in your menu needs to be optimized, because if it's not, you're going to have to do it when you're not fighting. And this game seems to really be emphasizing just getting in there and constantly being in the thick of it rather than being defensive or luring things out. So menuing could be very important, and hopefully the menus are equally as competent as they need to be. So this slide here is the final of the little tidbits that you might not have known about Bloodborne from the footage that we've been getting, and arguably one of the most interesting. It is the shop, or the trade as it says up there at the top. So this is the page that gets me the most excited. And if you've seen the footage, which I hope you have because it's really wonderful, you'll notice that at the very beginning in the Dream Refuge he goes up to this crazy looking fountain, talks to one of those awful looking like dead baby things, and it asks him to trade. And the very first page it shows you is consumables. And what I've done here, guys, is I've done a little bit of Photoshop. This is actually 2 images in one, because I noticed that one of them had a very interesting attribute. So if you can't see this, and I'm hoping that, on the resolution that I upload it, you can see it a lot better than I can on this preview window, but it was quite tricky to see some of the stats here. But at the top it is a blood vial, which is a special blood vial that restores HP. And I believe that one is 180 blood echoes to buy. Below that is the Quicksilver bullet, which is the first highlighted image. Bullets consumed when shooting guns, and I think that one is it 80? I really can't see on this, but you guys should be able to see, so I'm not even going to mention how much they are. And below that is firebombs that explode violently when thrown, and then below that is the pebble, round pebbles that can be thrown at targets. So the reason I've got 2 highlighted here, which is something you probably can't do in the game, is because as he was going through the menu when I was watching it, I noticed something, and that's what's unique here. The firebombs scale. So if you look at the attribute bonus, just like it was with the weapons, you'll notice there is a D in strength and an A in arcane. So for some reason, this consumable has 2 scaling statistics, and I have absolutely no idea if they're going to modify the damage, the distance, what the firebombs do, but just the notion of items having an extra measure of depth was enough to make me want to make this video, because I think that's a really, really cool thing, and I'm really excited to explore exactly what that means. And then the even more exciting part, but the dude never even went near it, is if you look at the top where it says Trade and Consumables in the top left, there is one tab that he's on right now which is Consumables, and then there's the thing next to it, and the thing next to it, and the thing next to it. Look how many tabs there are! So here we have a slightly more zoomed in version of that table. The very first one is a bottle and something that looks a little bit like a letter. So there's your consumable tab. The next one looks kind of like maybe a herb of some kind, like a potted plant, and maybe a mortar and pestle. I can't quite tell what it is. It looks like a dish sat on some kind of cushion that has something in it with a stick. That could be absolutely anything. I honestly couldn't tell you. The next one seems pretty obvious. It is the melee weapon tab, which the dude never even looked at, which infuriates me to no end, but anyhow, maybe he wasn't allowed. The next one is the guns. The one after that looks like armor. The one after that, I can assume, is probably maybe arcane or blood tinge, or maybe both, or maybe something different. The next one is the Bloodborne symbol that you see loading in the top corner. that has to be marks. If you remember earlier on in this video, I mentioned that you could put marks on your characters and I was hoping they were passives. Well, you can buy them. And one of the coolest things you often find about the Souls series, and hopefully Bloodborne when it comes out, is everything you get in these games seems to do something towards the game. Don't get me wrong, not all of them work that way, not everything works that way, but most of it does, and especially the things that you can buy. So it makes me wonder that even if it is something completely vestigial and worthless and unnecessary, maybe it'll still have a purpose, which is really, really exciting. And then the final thing is a chalice of some kind, which, I mean, what the hell could that be? It could be anything, couldn't it? You know, it could be treasures, it could be some kind of, maybe blood, a way of getting blood back. Any kinds of madness could be hiding and waiting there. It could be bounties. Can you imagine if that was a bounty list? Where it gave you, here's this creature that's going to be at this point, at this time period, and boom, if you go there, there's a special enemy spawns, you kill it, you get some kind of bonus. That'd be insane. I don't even want to start talking like that because I'll get too excited, but just look at this, just looking from it, there's so much detail in such a short amount of space that I'm hoping you saw something here that you didn't see before. And even if you didn't and you already knew all this stuff, you shared in the excitement and the zeitgeist that's going to be, you know, is it March 23rd or 24th, I think it is, when Bloodborne drops, and we're all in Yharnam figuring out what the hell all of this is. I'm excited, I hope you're excited, but thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.